Hello, everyone. This is Tommy. Thank you for joining us at World at War Comics. We have another amazing interview today. This time, we're speaking to Tim Seeley, 20 plus year veteran in the comic book industry. He has written for Marvel, which he still writes for, DC, which he still writes for at times, Image Comics, Dark Horse. He's kind of done it all. You might know him from his newest venture, which is called Local Man. If you haven't picked that up, they just did the second printing of issue one and issue two because it's sold out. You got to pick it up. It's a great story. I think you're going to like it. Without further ado, here is Mr. Tim Seeley. Well, hello, everyone. We want to welcome Tim Seeley. Tim, thanks for joining us today. It's great to have you, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. My pleasure.
Yeah. Big fan. You've been writing for a long time, obviously, from an art standpoint for a long time. I can't believe every time I go on a Wednesday, there's almost like another book out that you're the writer of, man. It's incredible how much you're pumping out. I don't know how you do it, man.
Part of it is how weird comics is timed. Is that some of the stuff that's coming out, I wrote
Yeah.
last summer, and then some of
Okay.
the stuff that's coming out is like I wrote like 4 weeks ago. So
Yeah.
it's such a weird system sometimes. But yeah, you don't get to kind of control it. I hope I'm not like over exposing myself or whatever. But I'm proud of all the stuff that's coming out. So hopefully
For
people
sure.
enjoy it.
Now you got some real bangers that have been coming out, man. Local Man, obviously, I think one of your newer projects has been amazing. So, but I'd like to kind of just go way back. I'm sure most people know who you are. You've been in the industry for quite a while, and you've had quite an impact in a lot of different areas. But maybe you could just go back. How did you get started in comics?
Well, so I mean, going way back, as a kid, we lived
Yeah.
in the country and we didn't have much to do. We were like, no neighbor kids and stuff. So my brothers and I kind of just needed stuff to do. My parents figured out that if they popped us some comics, we would shut up. I'm probably from like 5 on. I always wanted to do comics. I never really thought about doing anything else, but I didn't have a good sense of like, what writing meant I didn't, that there was always sort of separate jobs. So I just kind of always made comics just holistically.
Yeah.
Uh, and then I got a degree in illustration from the University of Wisconsin Eau Claire, and I went
Yeah.
to work at a children's book company. But I was like always working on comics on the side, so I kind of was doing like I would do kids illustrations at night, and then or during the day, and then at night I was working on like adult comics for Avatar Press.
Yeah.
Just kind of working my way up, and then I met a guy, Josh Blaylock, at a
Uh-huh.
convention line at one point, and we were talking about '80s stuff, and we ended up becoming friends. And he somehow finagled the rights to GI Joe from
Uh,
Hasbro, and he was just like a small, it's just a company of like a few people, uh,
yeah.
and so he started this publishing operation, publishing GI Joe through Image Comic. And I had interned at Marvel in college. I worked in the Spider-Man office,
Mm.
so I had a pretty good sense of like how to schedule things and do that kind of. I mean, more than probably most people at age 22 or whatever. And then I ended up. So I moved down to Chicago to work at Devil's Due first as sort of like an editor, and then that ended up being like a drawing gig, and then that ended up being I wrote Hack Slash, and that kind of set me
Yeah.
up as someone who writes and draws, and I've kind of switched back and forth over the course of a career.
Yeah.
For years I was an artist primarily, and then lately I've been primarily a writer.
Yeah. It seems like the last few years mainly writing, right?
Yep, pretty much.
Yeah.
I still do covers. I'm drawing backups in Local Man, and so I'm getting a chance to do some of that again. But
That's cool.
yeah,
Do you have a preference one over the other, or is the same passion for both?
um, I mean it's easier. Well, it depends. I guess
Yeah.
you can do more writing than you can drawing. Drawing just takes a lot more time.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but sometimes writing just sort of drains my brain, and I have to like just go do something because drawing is sort of more technical. Really, it's
Yeah.
not. It is creative, but it's not creative in the way writing is. There's more. Sometimes you're just filling up blacks or doing perspective, and it's very technical, and you can kind of zone out. So, I think in general, if I could get away with it, I would do both on the same book. But it's rare that I get to that. Local Man is like one of the first times I've gotten to do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was watching another interview of you. I think it was just this last week, and He-Man has played a huge impact on your life, it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, it was actually the first comic I ever got was the comics that came with the Master of the Universe figures.
Yeah.
That was sort of before I got Spider-Man and everything. So
Hmm.
yeah, so it was such a big part of us being kids, and we played with it
Sure.
together. And the cartoon came out, and I was like
Yeah.
that perfect age. So,
Yep.
so flash forward, 40 years, and now I work on writing Masters of the Universe, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, isn't that awesome? What a full circle kind of experience, right? Something that you enjoyed as a child, and now here you are. I think issue 3 just dropped this week, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, Masterverse. Yep. Just
Yeah,
yeah,
Masterverse. Yeah, I got them right here. Yeah, that's awesome, man.
I really like that book, and got to work with some legendary cartoonists and uh, like literally sort of play with their toys because Mattel had sent me different character designs for the new Masterverse toy line. Like here's Viking sort of He-Man, and here's Battle
Yeah,
Armor, and so I was able to do these sort of different versions like with the toys, which was pretty cool.
that is awesome, man. What a great experience. I think growing up, you had He-Man and then you had G.I. Joe, and I think they were around the same time. And I had a couple He-Man toys, but I was mainly a G.I. Joe guy. So that's kind of the direction I went in. But I had a best friend who was He-Man everything, right? So he had the gray skull and he had all the
Yeah.
characters. And man, it just brings back a lot of memories when I was reading these this last couple weeks. And man, what a fun read.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it. And we had the same thing in my house. We had the two tribes, the
Yeah.
He-Man tribe, and then my little brother was a G.I. Joe guy.
Yeah,
So, then we always had the bicker about which was better.
yeah. Well, they're completely different. They're very much opposite, right? But man, we loved them both. So we had a good time growing up. And yeah, I wouldn't
I
change
got to work,
anything, man. Those are good times.
yeah, I mean, I got to work on GI Joe eventually too.
Yeah.
It was fun, but for me, the GI Joe was I was like, I like the crazy stuff,
Yeah.
the sci-fi weird stuff, and the ninjas and all that sort of stuff. And I think you know the prevailing fandom is sort of more into the military stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah.
when I do it, I'd rather draw the stuff that's like He-Man, which is like Cobra Law and whatever craziness.
Right. That's awesome, man. Well, then you did a lot with DC, which was pretty fun. I love Green Lantern, and you had a pretty good run with Green Lantern, especially with Jessica Cruz and Simon Baz, which was pretty awesome. In fact, I was on Reddit, and there's a couple Green Lantern groups there. They have quite a bit of people, and I brought your name up because I knew we were going to do this interview, and I just, hey, what is one of the best Tim Seeley runs with the Green Lantern? And by far, it was Ghost of Past. I don't
Oh,
know if you remember that one, huh?
yeah, I really that was an interesting gig because we were trying to do like an Evil Dead like horror
Yeah, yeah,
in, Green Lantern. So, but yeah, I loved writing that book. I didn't grow up with like Green Lantern or Flash. Like I wasn't that wasn't
hmm
sort of, my DC characters when I grew up was Batman and Superman.
sure,
It's and so but Green Lanterns was not something I was immensely familiar with. But when they asked me about it, they mentioned Jessica, and I was like, "Why? She has anxiety, and I
yeah.
have to write that because I have a general anxiety disorder thing. So I felt like I could bring something to it with my personal experience. So
Well, it comes through. I mean, she's definitely one of my favorite. I mean, you got Hal and you got John, obviously, but I love Jessica Cruz. And to your point, right? She has a unique story, and I think it really came through in the writing. So yeah, no, it was pretty fun. And then obviously you were with Grayson and Nightwing for a very long time, and you've really developed that character quite a bit.
yeah, which was a fun sort of process on that one was that I started out with Grayson, so he wasn't Nightwing.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, exactly.
and then co-wrote that with Tom King. And then when they went back to the Rebirth thing, I did Nightwing for 30 some issues, a
Like
lot of
3 or 4 years of it, right?
yeah. But it was double shipping when I was doing it, so
Oh wow.
I was writing 2 issues of Nightwing a month when I was on it.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that was a ton of work, and I
Yeah.
can't believe I got through it. But yeah.
You did it, man. You did it. Now, when you're going into a character like a Green Lantern, whether it's Jessica Cruz or anything like that, how much time do you have to spend in research, right? Because especially with like DC and Marvel, right? Canon is so important because
Yeah.
all this history, and obviously you want to take it in a different direction so you could keep bringing interesting stories. But how much research goes into a character like that when you start to take over?
I mean, a lot.
Yeah, yeah,
The goal, if I can, I try to work on stuff that I don't need to do a ton of research for. So, like,
sure.
I didn't have to. Well, that's the cool thing about Master Universe. It's already in there. I already
Yeah.
know all that stuff,
Yeah.
and
You could
that kind
probably
of
write
helps.
that one in your sleep, right?
Yeah, but with Green Lantern or I mean, I was very familiar with Nightwing, but not. I mean, I still had to go back through, and I think I read. Every time I get a new gig, I usually spend like a week or two
Hmm.
just reading. So you know, I when I did Green Lantern, I must have bought, I don't know, $500 worth of trades and
Yeah.
back issues and stuff, and I just sat and read everything I could find. DC sent me a link to read some more stuff. So it's just like weeks of reading usually, and I try
Yeah.
to take notes about big arcs, like what is a defining characteristic of this character that we can continue.
Yeah.
It's and that's when, like, writing a team book or something, you're like, oh, I gotta do all of these characters.
Keep
But
me away from Justice Society or Justice League. Let's give me have
yeah,
one
totally.
character, right?
I mean, but I do a thing that's really helpful lately. I figured out is I can go to like flea markets and stuff, and I'll just find as many of the dollar comics of
Yeah.
whatever I'm gonna write. So
Yeah.
that's really helpful too. I just when I was started local man, I want to get back to sort of '90s vibe, and so uh,
Yeah.
I bought like $130 worth of $1 image comics, so just to sit down and read.
That's kind of fun though.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, it's not a big punishment, really. Obviously,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
like reading comics, but it does. It makes it not a hobby; it's a jobby now.
for sure. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it could be worse for sure.
Yeah. How much of a collector of comics are you now that you've been writing for so long, or do you not collect anymore and your focus is really just writing? Like, do you go back and there's still like things that you want to collect for your personal collection, or?
I was never a collector,
Oh,
honestly. I
okay.
was a reader.
Yep.
I'm not much of I used to. I didn't even bag and board books. Like
Yeah.
I just had boxes
Yeah.
of free range comics up until I was like up until 2 years ago, really.
Yeah.
But I was always a reader. I have tons of trades. I have a pretty curated collection of my favorite trade collections and stuff. And I definitely I love to go back issue shopping. Like I said, like I go to a flea market or I go to a
Yeah.
comic book store and I go to the dollar bins. Like I I'm rarely sort of a guy looking for key collector issues or something. I'm not
Yeah.
really. I've just never been that guy. But I
Yeah.
did finally bag and board all of my books. Well, I didn't do it. I hired one of my students to do it. Uh,
Uh-huh.
and so at least my stuff is taken care of now.
Yeah.
But when I went back through stuff, I have stuff that I'm like, holy shit, that's the first appearance of
Yeah.
Venom, and that's the first appearance of all this stuff. It's like Taskmaster and all this shit. I have
Yeah.
tons.
Yeah. Yeah.
But for a while they were just sitting in a basement in unbagged, sitting in boxes and piles and stuff.
Someone's gonna freak out if they ever see your collection, man. They're like, oh my God, put these in bags
Well, I
of
mean, that's kind of what happened. Is that my friends would come over and they'd be like, "What the fuck are you doing?" So I would. I finally 2 years ago when we moved, or 4 years ago, I moved into a house,
uh,
and it has a little workshop in the basement. We turned that into the comic room. So, but yeah, I had my assistant Sarah go through, and that was her education in comics. Is she spent 5 days on the floor of the basement
holy
begging
crap.
and putting stuff in order.
That's awesome, man. Well, that's a quick kind of baptism by fire into comic books if you have to do something like that.
Yeah, she learned a lot, she said, and she found out very quickly which ones appealed to her because she would grab them, and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
would take stuff home if she wanted to read stuff.
Yeah.
She'd come back every morning with like a half a short box with stuff she had read.
That's
Someday
awesome.
she'll tell that weird story about the week she spent in my basement.
Yeah, yeah. And then you got into Bloodsport. I mean, how long did you write that one? And you wrote it right when the movie was coming out, if I'm not mistaken, correct? A
Wait,
Bloodshot, I mean,
Bloodshot.
Bloodshot. Yeah.
Yeah, that was well, exactly. It was the movie was coming out, the Vin Diesel film, and they wanted to make the comic book a little bit more aligned with the vibe of the film, which
Yep.
the film was more of an action movie. It was like, it wasn't super dark and gritty, a little, but like it wasn't as serious as the book had been. So they had me do it, and of course, the movie came out the weekend of the lockdown. So, it was such a problem. It was like screwed up everything and
Oh
screwed
no.
the release of the book and kind of hurt the Valiant company pretty big. And
Yeah.
it was a fun book. I really liked working on it because I kind of treated it like a like like if it was Frankenstein's monster was in Fast and the Furious. Is kind of
Yeah,
how.
yeah. Yeah, it's a fun book though, man. I love that character. And it's funny is I read an article about a month ago and they are starting to think about a second movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah. I'll have to send you the link.
Because there
Oh,
was big plans. Bloodshot would have been a way to do also Harbinger and some other stuff that they were working on.
yeah.
But yeah, it just it was when I was working on the book, it was when the movie came out and there was that lockdown. It was the first book I got a pencils down order on. So everything was so
Okay.
screwed up that I was between like issues. I don't remember what it was, but like 6 and 9, I think there was like 4 months or something because it was
Oh
just
wow.
everything was nobody knew what was going to happen and if
Yeah.
it was going to mean no more comic shops and shit. So yeah, it was a rough ride, honestly.
Yeah. Did I bring up a bad
Oh
subject,
no,
Tim?
no, it's just weird.
Yeah. Oh man. Well then, there's another book that you wrote more recently, and it's Lucky.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It
I
was a
basically
fun read. I enjoyed it.
yeah, it's just so I had done a project for fun called Super Beast.
Uh-huh.
We did little mini comics and we did it through like a thrill. What was it? Thrill. I can't remember the thing. It was Mark Wade's platform. So we just
Uh-huh.
did, like it was just like a throwback to like '80s kids sort of superhero stuff. Uh,
Yeah.
the one character in there is Lucky. She was in the original story, which takes place a few years ago. She's a teenager, and
Yep.
then I had kind of had a rough plan of doing something with it, but I just never kind of got around to it. But this dude, Troy, Zangar, he emailed me and said he had this idea and he wanted to do something with Lucky. I was like, oh, that's perfect. And so I just wrote him a plot, like a brief plot, and then he just did his own thing with it, which is awesome.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I just gave him the rights to it, like just go ahead and do it. Have a good
Yeah.
time, put out some fun books. You know, I didn't. It wasn't meant to sort of be like a mass.
Yeah.
I want to try working with Keen Spot and stuff. It was fun. It was a cool little project to do.
It was. Yeah, yeah. No, it was a lot of fun. Well, let's get to today. I mean, I this week Captain America Unforgiven dropped. What I wanted to know, Tim, I mean, you're doing DC sometimes, you're doing Marvel, you're doing these independents. Like, do most writers and artists have that kind of freedom to kind of jump around, or some under contract? How does that work? Because you're kind of like I could find you on all like in my comic book store, right? You have a DC section, a Marvel section, an indie, and Tim Seeley is in each one of those.
Yeah, I mean it's all freelance. So
Yeah.
I did go through a period where I had exclusive contract at DC, which meant I couldn't work at Marvel or anything, but I could still do image books.
Oh, okay.
The that was during the Rebirth era, and that was when we were doing 2 books a month, and so that when that contract ran out, because I did those issues pretty quickly by doing 2 books a month. I just go back to being a freelancer. You know, I actually I don't love being a freelancer. I don't love hopping around a bunch of different companies, but I gotta pay bills and I've got
Sure,
pay
sure.
for insurance and I gotta, buy
Yeah.
my child. So I'm kind of mercenary. So, I know a lot of people at Marvel and DC, a lot of great editors there. So, when I'm sort of in need of some work to do, I throw out an email and then see what's kind of going on. And sometimes they'll be like, "Oh, we actually have a thing that you might be good for." So then I do some pitches. And there's plenty of stuff that I didn't get that nobody will ever know about.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I pitched for and it didn't work out. But I kind of, like you said, the timing has worked out so that lately it looks like I'm everywhere. So
No, I think you're kind of firing in all cylinders, man. You're pumping out a lot of really good stuff. So that's why I was just kind of curious how that worked as a writer. So I would have thought freelancing is the better of the two, but I understand what you're saying
I
from
mean, it's it's not. I mean, it works because if there's plenty of work, and I know a lot of people, and I've been doing this a long time, so it's not like
yep.
I have to spend, you know, samples very often because mostly people know who I am and what I do. So,
Yeah, yeah,
but it's crazy how much how much work it is to get work. It really
yeah,
is.
yeah,
That's sort of the hardest part, I guess. I
yeah,
spend probably a day every month just hustling.
yeah, yeah. The hustle never ends, huh?
Right. Yep.
Yeah, yeah,
Job is the hustle, really.
yeah, yeah. Well, then we get to local, man, which is blowing up. I mean, I don't know anybody who has read this that isn't enjoying it. It's incredible, man. I don't know if you want to kind of dive in a little bit of how you came up with this story. It looks like you've written it with Tom Fleeks. Is that how you pronounce his name?
Tony, please. Yeah.
Tony Fleeks. Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
where did this story come from? Is it something that you two have been sitting on for a long time, or is this a fairly new story that you came up with?
It's kind of a combination of all those things.
Okay.
So when I was a kid, I had drawn this comic book, which starred a character named Crossjack,
Uh-huh.
and so I had that name kind of kicking around, and I always liked the name, and I kind of thought I would do something else with it, but I was kind of just sketching around one day, and I redrew him, and I kept the '90s thing. I didn't
Yeah.
redesign him. I just kind of kept my original design, and I ended up really liking it. I thought it was just kind of striking, and sometimes when you're 12 or 13, you pull some shit off that you think you could do. So
Yeah, I mean, this is
cross.
very 90s right here, man. I love it, right? You have the front cover and the back cover, but it's incredible, man. It gives me some really cool old school 90s image vibes, man.
Yeah, and so that was kind of what ended up thinking about it is, and so I
Yeah.
had the idea of doing. I had the title Local Man. I had this rough idea of basically my pitch for myself was if Shaft from Youngblood had to move back to Wisconsin, it kind of was the pitch I had in my head, uh,
Yeah.
and sort of had this idea kind of kicking around, but I didn't really know exactly what it was going to be. And then I went out. I was in at a Long Beach Comic Con in California. Um, and this was January 2020, so it was like just before everything went to shit. But I was out to eat with a bunch of friends, and Tony was there, and he and I know each other, but we mostly one of the things that we'd always shared was that we love a very specific kind of '90s comic, which most
Mm.
people call not good comics. Uh, but we always like the passion and energy for some of these books, and we're talking about those, and we're like, it's too bad you couldn't get the art of like these '90s comics with like the story of like a '90s Vertigo book because
Yeah.
the story in a Vertigo books were
Oh,
always so incredible, and then
yeah.
art in the Image books, and then we're like, well, shit, we should make that. We
Yeah.
should make a book that's like '90s, '90s Vertigo with '90s Image art, and so we started kicking sketches back and forth, and then shit got locked down, and
Yeah.
I got my pencils down order from Valiant and a couple other places, so I had time. Uh,
Yeah.
and so Tony and I would just get on Zoom and talk through this sort of idea, and it like kind of just it really kind of came together because we were doing it. He was thinking of ideas that I wouldn't think of, uh,
Yeah.
and so we kind of made something that had to be both of us. So uh, I mean, I drew the first issue back up in I think like June of 2020. So it took almost 2 years before it came out.
Yeah.
But that's okay. We were able to, sort of plan everything. We, you know, had all kinds of crazy ideas of like hiring all these image guys, and that gave us time to do it. So, and it came out in February, right? Yes,
Yep.
February. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I'm just stunned that people are enjoying it the way that they are. We knew we would love it, but we were kind of, we weren't sure if the sort of '90s thing would turn people off, but it hasn't. And even people
No.
who don't particularly like that stuff, they get it, which I think is
Yeah.
the kind of, and you don't have to like it because you don't have to. It's not the only part of the story; it's part of the story. So
Yeah. 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 No, I think it's very well balanced. And to your point, I mean, I live here in Hemet near Palm Springs in California, and we have our own little local comic book store, and they ran out almost immediately. And then when issue two came out, because issue one did so well, he ordered a little more, and it ran out. So it's. I
good,
think people are digging it, man. I mean, just reading online on Twitter and stuff, it seems like you got a winner here.
yeah, good. I mean, that's I think the thing I've noticed lately is that you know, the people want sincerity. Like they,
Yeah.
you can tell Tony and I like this stuff. Like we both love, noir kind of stories. We love
Yep.
crime comics. And we love those '90s things. And I think us putting those together made something that, you can feel our affection for it, which,
Yeah.
people want that kind of sincerity out of their comics. I think they don't, people don't respond well to something they kind of feel like is a movie pitch or something. It's kind of, you have to like want, you have to want to make this comic for people to care. And we really wanted to make this comic. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, it definitely comes across. And the way issue 2 ends with Crossjack seems like he's breaking a few rules and he might be back a little bit. So I can't wait for issue 3. I don't want to give anything away. I think anybody listening to this should go out there and get it. I know the second printing of issue 1. I did see it in a comic book store in North San Diego. So they're starting to get another round because
yes,
everyone's sold out. So that's
we
exciting.
had to reprint issue 2 as well, which I think comes
Oh,
out
wow.
next week or this week. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the reprint, we had to reprint issue 2 and issue 1.
That's
So
awesome. I mean, that's a good feeling, right? To know that
yeah,
reprints are taking place.
yeah, it's great. I hope people up their orders for 3 because I really don't want to reprint it. So please up your orders if you're a comic book store.
Yeah, yeah. Well, maybe they learned their lesson on the first 2.
Yeah, I wish they would.
Not too much optimism with that one, huh?
I don't have great faith in that.
Well, what else do you have going on that we haven't talked about? I know we talked about Local Man, Captain America. You kind of touched on Lucky and where that ended up. What else do you have working right now, Tim?
Oh yeah, well, Hexware comes to an end,
Oh,
I
that's
believe.
right.
Weeks.
Yeah, Image.
That's my other Image book. I
Yep.
do that with Arancia Studios in Italy. That's Mirka Andolfo, her studio with some artists that she works with. It's a science fiction sort of cyberpunk fantasy story, I
Yeah.
guess,
Yeah.
with a robot who buys a soul,
Yeah.
and then has to hunt down these escape souls. But then that you realize that's not quite the story. So it's kind of a dark fantasy cyberpunk thing, inspired by, kind of manga designs and
Yeah.
anime, that kind of stuff. And I was hoping to sort of make it for an audience that might be looking for something like that connects, like teenagers, essentially.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know if it worked, but I really liked the book, and the artist Zulema Escato was really good. So she did an awesome job.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the questions that I like to ask everybody that's on is, what do you think of the current situation in comics? Do you think it's strong right now? Do you think that there is opportunities? What is your feeling where comics are at right now today?
I mean, I definitely have some opinions on the subject. I think
Uh-huh.
um, I think the content is extremely strong. I think putting out some awesome books.
Yep.
Most companies, I think, are firing on all cylinders. Um, I don't think the market is strong at the moment. I think there's a lot of readers. There's
Yeah.
probably as many readers as there's ever been.
Hmm.
Maybe going back to even the 50s. I mean, I'm talking like people who will read comics, because
Yeah.
this whole generation of kids who came up on manga, who read webtoons.
Yeah.
The number of hits on webtoons is astronomical, and people making those comics are finding an audience.
Yeah.
I don't think the direct market is taking advantage of or finding those readers.
Yeah.
I think, unfortunately,
Yeah.
the main sort of get for the direct market right now is like selling people multiple copies of the same book with variant covers, or
Yeah.
enforce scarcity, which I
Yeah.
think is the goal should be to have more books for more readers, not less books for more people spending more money.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's particularly in a great shape right now, and I don't know, who's going to figure out how to sort of expand the market beyond what we have. I think too many publishers and too many retailers, honestly,
Yeah.
sort of content um,
Hmm.
with this sort of weak market at the
Hmm.
moment. And I
Yeah.
think, part of it is um, there was a sort of influx of people out of the pandemic that
Yeah.
got back, and we didn't hang on to them. It's
Yeah.
unfortunate. We didn't give them. We didn't make books easily available. Kids want stuff they can get fast and easy, and that's
Yeah.
manga. Manga's
Yeah.
fast,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, a lot of American comics are not, they're not easy to get. So
Yeah. I feel like indie comics has the biggest opportunity to make some of those changes that you were mentioning because of the flexibility they have and the unique stories that you could bring, right? Because you don't have, 30, 40, 80 years of canon that you have to kind of hold to. I don't know if you agree with that, but
yeah,
I
I
like
do.
the indie scene because there is that flexibility to tell a unique story. And I feel like those are the areas where hopefully you could tell stories that aren't being told and you could attract some of those younger readers or new readers. I don't know if you feel the same
I mean,
or
I agree, but unfortunately, when
uh-huh.
retailers cut orders, they don't cut Marvel and DC. They
Yeah.
cut indie books. So, you know,
Yeah.
I
That's
think
a good point.
and part of the problem, I think, where the market for trade paperbacks is very strong.
Hmm.
The collected edition book market stuff,
Yeah.
that's where the readers are. That's doing very well. But the problem is that we're in a weird spot where um, retailers are like very conservative about ordering monthly comics.
Yeah.
Maybe they only order issue one, and then they wait till the trade comes around, and that's where they'll sell. That's where they'll make their money. They'll get the trade. Well, the
Yeah.
problem is if you're a comic creator, funding issues 2 through 5 then can be very difficult. I mean,
Yeah.
even Man, which sells out,
Yeah.
is going to have a rough spot
Hmm.
if retailers don't catch up the orders to the reprints.
Yeah.
So, I have utter faith we'll sell a lot of trades. I mean, I know that that's true. Revival sells very well in trades. Hack Slash
Yep.
sells very well in trades. So I know that that's in our future, but the industry hasn't connected those two things. We're
Hmm.
letting a lot of books fall through the cracks, just waiting to see what hits, and there's not a
Yeah.
lot of investment in the future, unfortunately.
Yeah. No, that's a great perspective. I always love to hear the perspective, and I appreciate your honesty on that, Tim. I do agree with you 100%. And yeah, we'll have to see what happens. We got to gain more readers, though. I think manga's doing a really good job, and I enjoy manga too. I mean, I have to admit, there's a lot of really good stuff happening with anime
Yeah, for
specifically.
sure. And they have a system that works very well, which
Yeah,
the books are relatively cheap. They're long. They're they're very portable, and they have this advertising system, which is that there's an animes that sort of
yeah,
introduce people to the concept, and so the books can catch up to the anime eventually. But if you like the first anime, you've got, let's say, maybe another year worth of reading the comics,
yeah,
um, and we don't have that. I mean, we don't have any kind of, the pipeline doesn't exist. The People
yeah,
don't go see a Marvel movie and then go buy a Marvel book, and that's screwy. It doesn't
yeah,
happen.
yeah,
So the connection, unfortunately, whether it's their fault or I don't know, it just is
yeah,
for some reason it's not as well placed as it could be.
yeah. Wow. Interesting. Hopefully, we could get more readers because I love walking into a comic book store and being able to pick up a comic book and
I
holding it
know.
in my hand and like I have the DC and the Marvel app, so I'll go and look and read a lot of
Sure.
older stuff, but nothing like holding a comic book in your hand, at least in my experience. So I do like to purchase them at the comic book store. So, but I'm also 48 years old, so maybe I'm a dinosaur when it comes to that kind of stuff. I'm not sure.
I mean, I don't think the kids mind reading things in print. They don't seem to mind at
Yeah,
all. It's just
yeah,
that make it hard to get. They're not
yeah,
going to get it. I mean, you can go to Barnes Noble and there's a huge manga section, and
yeah,
it's well stocked and it's easy to pick up number one.
yeah.
Go into the comics section at that same Barnes Noble and try to find an Iron Man book to read. You know, volume one. What's volume one of Iron Man?
Yeah. Who knows, right?
And the books that do seem to work are there. Walking Dead, for instance,
Yeah.
Saga.
Yeah.
Even Hack Slash. They have a number one. It's easy to find.
Yeah.
That's the one you start with.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I think we just don't have, and I don't see like a big push by those companies, the big companies, to figure that out. It's
Yeah.
how they don't, they haven't put in a lot of effort to it. So
Yeah.
hopefully places like Image and Vault, Dark Horse,
Yeah.
IDW, I think they're the ones that are going to be able to, like you said, be a little more flexible. But it's not
Yeah.
going to be in the monthly comics; it'll be in the trades.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. Well, Tim, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on and sharing your experience and everything that you're working on. Anything else that you want to leave us with?
I think I'm good. I think I yammered on about all my shit. So yeah, I think that's all of it. I hope.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Well, congratulations on a 20 plus year career in comic books, and congratulations on the success of Local Man. Can't wait for issue 3. Will this be an ongoing series or?
yeah. So the way we're gonna do we'll have the first 5 issues come out, and then we have a sort of, well, it'll be announced next month. We're having sort of a like an
Okay.
annual, or like a one shot that comes out, sort of
Hmm.
to get new people to try it out, and then the trade comes out, and then we'll go back to issue
Nice.
2. So we just need to hold on to monthly readers as much as we can,
Yeah.
and sell a bunch of trades when we get our chance. So
Sounds good, man. Well, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming on, Tim. It was a pleasure meeting you and a pleasure having you on the show. And hopefully we'll be able to talk again soon.
all right, man. Thanks so much.
Yeah, appreciate it.